everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you all today? Some feedback. I mean, we're in a great atmosphere. Thank you and welcome to the 20th annual Tampa Bay Fair Housing Symposium. We're glad to have you here. I'd like to let you know also that the moniker that we're going by is advancing the fair housing market today's market. It's going to be an insightful, interesting, and engaging discussion amongst peers and people that are just trying to find out what's going on, hopefully. So not to belabor the situation, I just want to make note of the brochure and the pamphlet. Inside of that pamphlet has all of the bios of all the people that will be speaking. So just for your reference, I'm not going to necessarily go into that much in introductions, but if you'd like to, you know where to go, and it's toward the back of the actual pamphlet. Also, the organizations that help put this together are on that back page, so you know to say, hey, thank you, we appreciate you, toward the end. And basically, I just want to introduce, first and foremost, the person that I believe is the best mayor in the United States of America, Ms. Jane Castor, to present a proclamation and provide a few words for us. So, Ms. Jane Castor.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is so exciting. First of all, thank you all for being here this morning. I know that everyone's schedule is busy, but to come together to talk about, explore solutions for our housing crisis is something that is critical for all of our communities. And for those who took that long trip over the bridge, I don't know what it is about, we're all one community. People will say, oh, you're the mayor of Tampa Bay. And I say, well, it's kind of a body of water. But we are Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater. I saw some people from Largo as well. So I know that there are other areas here, but it just seems like that bridge, right? For us, the ones of us who were born here, it seems like a long journey. But something that's unusual is that since I've been mayor and we work as a region to attract businesses here. We've been very, very fortunate with the number of businesses that have moved to our city, their headquarters, or they've expanded here. I often joke with my staff that I'm going to have like the carpal tunnel surgery because I've cut so many ribbons, which is a very positive thing. But it's interesting in that if St. Pete gets a business that decides to move there, then their team lives in Tampa. And if Tampa gets the business to move here, the team lives in St. Pete. So there's some kind of a bridge attraction. I think that people, it's maybe the idea they may see a dolphin on their way to work, which is always exciting. That never gets old. But again, back to the fair housing, incredibly, incredibly important, and really at a crisis level throughout our community, the availability of affordable housing. And we, just in the city of Tampa, we need 26,000 affordable units today, not tomorrow, but today. And so we're going at that from so many different avenues. One is, historically, housing, the funding for affordable housing has been provided through federal grants and to a much smaller degree through the state, and rarely through local budgets. Last year, 2023, we start working on budgets so quickly. We're already on our 2025 budget and working on that. And I'm like, what happened? Didn't we just do this a year ago? It's like we're always in budget mode. But 2024, and that means the mayor's office with city council put $50 million of our general fund budget into affordable housing. That's how important it is for us. And one of the reasons that I ran for mayor is that this city's changing more than it has in my 64 years here. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for our city to grow successfully. And one of the ways that we do that is ensuring that we maintain our history, our culture, and our diversity. And we've seen other cities grow very rapidly. We've seen these examples across the United States, and the housing costs rise so quickly that people are pushed out. We have got to ensure that that doesn't happen in the entire Tampa Bay region, because it really goes to the core of our identity of being a very welcoming, friendly, diverse region to come to and live in and work in. And so we have put funding behind that, but we've also, from a number of different levels, we've approached it from our infill. We're on the third phase of that, where we find city lots, identify those, and provide those through an RFP to developers to build those homes, making them affordable because they don't have to pay the cost of land or the water sewer hookups and those types of things. So we're on phase 3 of that. And so far, the city of Tampa, we're probably around 150 of those lots that have been provided. And the last infill project we did, all of the developers were first-time partners with the city of Tampa, and they were all small minority developers. So again, not just making those houses available, but growing our small women and minority-owned businesses as we do that. Looking at our rental and mortgage assistance. My chief of staff just came back from Harvard. Bloomberg had a course there for chiefs of staff from around the larger cities around the United States. And one of the issues that they focused on was eviction. And they talked about the impact that eviction had on families, and that we have got to do everything that we can to avoid having families evicted from their homes or from their apartments. And that's something that, you think about the act or the actions of eviction, but you don't think of those ripple effects that they have on so many individuals. So focusing on that as well. Just so many programs that we have, Dare to Own the Dream, a number of programs that we support here in the city of Tampa, and then also working with those individuals that are providing affordable housing, that are stepping into that arena that we all know is just incredibly confusing. I said when I became mayor that my goal after 8 years was just to learn the acronyms associated with housing. So that's about as deep as my intellect will go. But I thank each and every one of you for the part that you play in fair housing, in providing affordable housing as well. And the issues continue to grow each day. It's not like you have a solution, you put that in place and then just move forward. Great examples from those from Tampa, the Funland Drive-In out on East Hillsborough Avenue. We tried to buy that piece of property. Richmond Group beat us to it. By the time they came forward with their plans, the cost of construction had increased so dramatically that we had to provide them with $12 million so that they could complete that program, which will provide 350 affordable units for our community. We also have to look at the way that we construct housing as well. I went to South by Southwest and took a side excursion to a company that does the 3D printing for housing as well, so we can provide that housing much more quickly, and that the housing is resilient and sustainable. I think that's important moving into the future here in our community and throughout the world as well. So also, we don't just approach housing affordability from that particular lane in housing. We look at transportation. That's a huge impact. If we can take the transportation slice off the budget plate, which is the second most costly for any individual or family, then you have more money to put towards housing. And we're working in that area as quickly as we can to provide some mass transit solutions. You guys have heard me joke before, mass transit in the Tampa Bay area is defined as more than 2 people in an SUV. So we've got to change that, and we've got to provide reliable mass transit solutions. Workforce development. bringing in those companies with the high-paying jobs and with specific skill demands, and making sure our community has the skills necessary to fill those jobs. Higher paying jobs, more money to put towards housing as well. So all of these areas we're working on feverishly each and every day. I couldn't be more proud of our housing team and all that they're doing, because your heart really has to be in it, because it's certainly more than a 40-hour a week job. It is a calling, in my personal opinion, and I thank everyone who ventures into that area to help individuals ensure that they have a roof over their head, but also that everyone is treated fairly in our community. Lastly, one of the programs that we have too, and everybody, I don't know if it's on your agenda, but everybody's more than welcome to go and take a look. We actually modeled it after a program in San Antonio and after Pinellas Hope, and we call it Tampa Hope. The county has responsibility for certain social services, including homelessness, but the problem is concentrated in our urban core. And so we couldn't just point to the county and say that's their issue. So we partnered with Catholic Charities and modeled our Tampa Hope after the Pinellas Hope. And so we have a tract of land. We finally got the electricity out to that location. And so right now, the individuals for the last little over a year have been residing in tents up on pallets. But we have the cottages now that actually are from the corporation called Pallets, that are air conditioned. They have a single bed and a desk in there. And we can serve 300 to 500 homeless individuals at that location at a time. And the difference is there are wraparound services. If individuals have mental health issues, they have medical problems, if they have addiction issues, we help with workforce and also work to get them into permanent housing. To date, we've had well over 1,000 individuals go through that program, and we've had over 20% gainfully employed and over 20% placed in permanent housing. So it is a successful program, and it's a great public-private partnership as well. There are a number of different agencies from the Hillsborough County area that are working with us towards that solution and that goal of ending homelessness. So very, very proud of our team, all that they're doing here in the community, but I couldn't thank you guys enough for all that you do every day to help our community and the way that we collaborate here in this region. I go to a lot of U.S. Conference of Mayors events, and other mayors will say, you know, what is the secret to Tampa? Like, what are your best practices that we can take back to our city to help us grow successfully? And I said, the one thing that I would point to as our most successful best practice is the one thing you can't have, and that's the relationships. It's the way that we come together when there are things to celebrate or when there are issues to address. And that really goes to the core of our success as a region. So I thank you all for that as well. And now I'm going to give you guys the gift of the day, and I'm not going to read this entire proclamation because it's all the whereases. But I'm going to provide this proclamation. This is in the honor of the 56th anniversary of the 1968 Civil Rights Act, also known as the Fair Housing Act. It's amazing when you think all of these years and we're still struggling with something that seems so simplistic, doesn't it? But anyway, I appreciate all that you are doing. You know, we're proud of our efforts. I know each of you are proud of their efforts and what they're doing as well. But we are always working to advance fair housing in today's market, and that it gets more difficult every day, doesn't it, as the cost of our housing continues to rise. So we are dedicated. I always love the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the greatest city in the nation, sorry to the other cities, I went to actually a Bloomberg. We had 41 mayors, and there were a number of European mayors that they were called the Right Honorable Lord Mayor. I said, oh, I'm having my kids call me that. I get home, I tell them, they're like, yeah, not a chance, Mom. I'm like, okay. But anyway, apparently I'm at least have a little bit of authority, if not the Lord Mayor Right Honorable. So we are declaring the month of April 2024 as Fair Housing Month in the city of Tampa, and we urge all citizens to observe this month by preserving, supporting, and promoting each person's right to housing choice within their means without regard to their status, and to celebrate the Fair Housing Act that protects these rights under the law. And thank each of you for what you do to make this a reality. God bless you all. Thank you all again.
All right, let's thank Mayor Castor. While we're on the roll with dignitaries, our next person is Roger Hamburg from the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida.
Well, I didn't know I was supposed to bring a gift, so I'm sorry. So my name's Roger Hamburg. I'm the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida. I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for 35 counties here in the state of Florida, Hillsborough obviously being one of them. And it's a real privilege to work in my office. We are part of the United States Department of Justice, and a lot of times when people hear that, they think of lawyers who live and work in D.C., and there's certainly a number of lawyers, fine lawyers who live and work in D.C. who work for the department. Most of the lawyers for the United States Department of Justice live and work in the communities they serve, and that is the case with the over 140 lawyers in my office. They go to the same schools that your kids do. Apparently they go over the same bridge that everyone does to get into here. They look for dolphins. They shop at the same supermarkets, and they go to the same restaurants. And one of the things I get to do as United States Attorney, being a member of the community, is to decide what I believe, based on my interactions with the community, being a member of this community, what is an important priority. And for us, fair housing is a top priority. And one way that I show that to be true is I have dedicated resources in my office to do that. I've created a civil rights unit for which fair housing is a very top priority. And if you look at our press releases over the years, you'll see many of the fair housing successes we have had. Most recently, we did a redlining case in Jacksonville, and I have put on the very best of my office on these cases, and they are here with us today. We got Johanse Pettis, and we got Alex, who's another lawyer dedicated specifically to these cases. And as the mayor said, this is about relationships. When I look in this room, I realize that we can accomplish so much by working together. And it's the job of my office, and it's our goal to root out and eliminate all forms of illegal discrimination in housing. And unfortunately, we still see that. We have cases involving racial discrimination, disability discrimination, gender discrimination, sexual harassment, and every sort of discrimination that can be out there. And so what I will hope you will do at some point during this day is you'll find Johanse and Alex and introduce yourself to them, because we want to be a part of the solution in eliminating illegal discrimination in fair housing. If you can't find them at some point and you want a point of contact, just search U.S. Attorney Tampa. You'll find our website. We've got a civil rights hotline. We've got an email. I hope you'll reach out to us so that we can work together to achieve the goal which we all want, which is fair housing here in Tampa. Thank you.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Hamburg. Next, we have Brian Bottiglia. I hope I didn't slaughter that. A commissioner from the Florida Commission on Human Relations.
Good morning, everybody. Just a brief comment. My father was, he started his career as a federal prosecutor, and he was transferred from Miami to Tampa. And that was in 1956, and Mr. Hedberg said there were 140 lawyers now in your office. He was the only lawyer in Tampa. So that shows you how many people are now in that particular office with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and how much we've grown here in the Tampa Bay area. So good morning, I'm Brian Battaglia. I'm the commissioner with the Florida Commission on Human Relations, and on behalf of the commission, I extend warm greetings to everyone gathered here as we come together to commemorate Fair Housing Month. Undoubtedly, the organizers have done an exceptional job putting together this event. So let's take a moment to express our gratitude for all those who have contributed to making this event a success. Thank you. I also would like to recognize our Executive Director, Cheyenne Castilla. She exemplifies dedication to eradicating discrimination in housing and lending, and she will be addressing you all shortly. Cheyenne, we deeply appreciate your efforts. Thank you. Most importantly, I'd like to pause and express my sincere gratitude to each one of you gathered here today. It is your unwavering dedication that keeps housing discrimination at the forefront of public consciousness, ensuring that it is neither accepted or overlooked. Each of you plays a pivotal role in shaping equal protection for all, particularly those facing adversity. Therefore, I extend my heartfelt thanks to each of you. So please take a moment to acknowledge and applaud yourselves for your invaluable contributions. On April 11, 1968, President Johnson signed the Federal Fair Housing Act, prohibiting discrimination concerning the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, religion, national origin, sex, and as later amended, handicap and familial status. The tradition of celebrating Fair Housing Month each April has grown larger and larger in subsequent years. We celebrate this monumental legislation, and the people throughout the United States are encouraged to learn more about their rights and responsibilities under the Fair Housing Act as part of National Fair Housing Month. Each year a theme is selected to resonate with the current times. This year's theme is The Act in Action, encouraging all individuals to actively engage with their communities and offer assistance to those in search of rental, home ownership, purchasing, or insurance opportunities. Furthermore, it emphasizes the importance of educating individuals about their fair housing rights, empowering them to take action if they encounter any form of discrimination. As you may not know, the Florida Commission on Human Relations is your state agency charged with investigating cases of housing discrimination. We also have statutory jurisdiction with respect to the Florida Civil Rights Act and the Florida Public Employee Whistleblower Act. Last year alone, the FCHR investigated and resolved 282 cases where housing discrimination was alleged. Now, even with the passage of the federal act and the Florida Housing Act, Fair Housing Act in 1983, discrimination in housing persists, with the top two bases of discrimination being disability and race. In closing, we are blessed to live in a great nation and a great state. We strive each day to become better. Please always remember and thank those who have defended our laws, including the laws we are here to celebrate today. Remember those who sought justice and fought against injustice. and laid great sacrifice, including many times during our history, the ultimate sacrifice at the altar of freedom, defending our Constitution. On behalf of the the Florida Commission on Human Relations and our staff and my fellow commissioners, thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you for giving us a retrospect, like a, hey, this is where it came from kind of thing. Next would be Cheyenne Castilla, the Executive Director of the Florida Commission on Human Relations.
Good morning and welcome everyone. As she indicated, my name is Cheyenne Castilla with the Florida Commission on Human Relations, and I also would like to personally welcome you here today. I'm pleased that we have so many esteemed speakers and presenters and just organizations represented here today. I couldn't be more happy to have been invited and proud that my agency is here to speak with you today. I know that you're going to hear great things. We have Dante Bonner who's going to do a presentation on behalf of the FCHR this morning on Fair Housing 101, and I know you're going to find it to be both engaging and informational. As the Executive Director of the FCHR, I have been working with staff to find new and broader ways to build these partnerships that we're talking about today. And I hope and invite you all, as we're able to do these networking, if we can build these partnerships together. I look forward to working with all of you. I first began working in fair housing, I hate to say, but it's been 17 years ago. And maybe I was naive at that time, but 17 years later, the Commission is receiving more complaints than ever. This is the biggest year we've had, and I hate to say it like it's a good thing, it's not. We would hope to have seen these things decreasing. But in that work as well, I think I've had the opportunity to work with great people in helping them. And so each one of those cases that I'm able to help somebody kind of propels me in the work that I do. It encourages me to continue doing this great work. And I hope it encourages you as well. So, you know, being able to help somebody takes me back to one of the first cases that I was able to settle, in which the family just wanted an accessible kitchen. It really was that simple. And by helping them get that, the disabled person was able to go to the refrigerator by themselves. I mean, this is a luxury that many of us probably overlook, but it meant so much to that individual. So as we engage on today's activities, I want us to think back to the words of Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." I know that we do still have a ways to go before we reach the point where all people are allowed to freely choose, use, and enjoy their dwelling. But I firmly believe we're getting closer each year. So continue to be encouraged, even in small victories, and become renewed in your efforts to bring about these important societal changes. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, Executive Director Castilla. We currently have a representative for the Florida Senator Darrell Rouse, Miss L. Coffey. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Ella Coffey, and I am a senior legislative aide for Senator Darrell Rouse, who covers part of Pinellas County and Hillsborough County. as a state senator. So welcome to all this morning as well. Very glad to see the connections that we have across the bridge. I live in Hillsborough County and I work in Pinellas County, so I get to see those dolphins every day, a couple times a day. But the connection is what's important. We have to work as a team in order to make sure we are achieving what we want, which is a great region to live in. Senator Russo, I just wanted me to share 2 points with you. The state is actually paying attention to what's taking place with affordable housing and fair housing here in the state. We have a very large state with which draws wonderful people here. The water is absolutely magnificent and it draws everybody here. The sun is always out. So the state's aware of some of the issues that's going on, and they're actually starting to take a real hard look at what they can do to assist. Sometimes I know that's a little hard to believe with some of the cities that the state is trying to assist, but they do want to assist as well. Past couple of years, there has been an attempt to assist. So when you're visiting Tallahassee or calling your state senators and your House reps, just, if you do it once a month, just call and let them know housing is still important. We want to make sure we have a very diverse community and that we're inviting everyone here to the community and not just those that can afford to live in great luxury. We want to make sure that we have fair housing here as well. We know what the problem is. We can get to that solution as a group where Tampa Bay region can be a top region. Other than that, that's it for me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Right, thank you, Ms. Coffey. Well, we're about to start the program, so this gets exciting. The first presentation will be combating appraisal discrimination, and there's two parties will be providing or conducting the presentation, and it's Frank Gregoire and Mike Twitty from the Pinellas County Property Appraiser. Thank you.
Morning, Frank.
You're the elected official, so you
How are you,
talk.
sir? All right. Well, good morning, everybody. So Frank's going to do the heavy lift on this one because a lot of this is revolving around fee appraisal. So kind of set the stage on the difference between what we both do now. We both started in the fee world, which would be the normal, appraisal world that most of you are familiar with, where we're doing bank work, things like that. I was predominantly on the commercial side, so I did a lot of commercial work for 26 years in the private sector, but we had a full service firm, and obviously did lots of residential as well. Frank's been in the residential realm for since I was probably about this tall, but look how great he looks still. He's still extremely vibrant, and he's a wonderful asset to the appraisal industry. And an ambassador for it. He travels the nation, educating and being a very good spokesman for what we do. So now I have transitioned over into the government sector, and I am the elected Pinellas County Property Appraiser. So somehow they let me across the bridge. I had to surf on a dolphin to get here. They still allow that. If in Pinellas County. I know in Hillsborough it's frowned upon. So I was able to get over here, and Frank and I talked about doing this. So a lot of this is really from the fee world side, from the lender perspective and the homeowner perspective, but I'm going to chime in here and there on different tools and things that you can find on your respective property appraisers' websites to help validate the credibility of the appraisal reports that you're looking at. So if there are concerns of bias, there are telltale signs, and there are things that you can check to make sure that an appraisal is credible. So with that, I guess we'll kick off here.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks also for the invitation to speak. It's really quite an honor to speak. I'm not an influencer. I'm not a TikToker, but I do an awful lot of social media, and I just want you to just thank you. All right. Gotcha. My name is Frank Gregoire. I'm a state certified residential appraiser. Is this the clicker here?
They want us to say next slide.
Next slide, okay, next slide. We're going to be talking about how to read an appraisal report. The fact is that there is bias, if there is illegal discrimination that is reflected in the appraisal report, it's important that you understand what it is you're reading, what it should read like, and how to read it. And in order to do that, we've got to get some common terms out of the way. They're terms that you all throw around all the time, but they have distinct and special meanings when we're talking about real property appraisals. One of them is price. Everyone knows what price is. The fact is price is a fact. It is the amount actually paid or asked for a property. So that's a fact. Value, on the other hand, is not a fact. Value is perceived by individuals. And when it comes to appraisals, value is an opinion. Value is the amount for which something is exchangeable, and value varies depending on the parties involved. When we're talking about property appraisals, particularly for mortgage lending, the type of value is important, and that is market value. Like it says here, market value is a type of value as stated as an opinion that presumes the transfer of property, ownership or a bundle of rights as of a certain date under specific conditions. The other thing, there was something, and that definition happens to come from the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. Also, when we talk about property, there's something there that maybe you missed. Property is a bundle of rights. We're not talking about sticks and dirt. We're talking about the rights to the sticks and dirt. That's what an appraiser develops an opinion of value. This definition of market value that you see in front of you is the one that you'll find in the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac appraisal form. The Fannie Mae Freddie Mac appraisal form is the one that is most often used for mortgage lending. There are several definitions of market value out there. This one is put up on the screen because that is what an appraiser is developing an opinion of when they do an appraisal for you when you're borrowing money. As long as I'm talking to y'all, how many real estate professionals do we have in the room? Good, thank you. That helps me an awful lot. So we got a definition of market value. So now this one works?
That works too.
Okay, good. Market value, notice that there are 5 conditions. So not only are we talking about what a buyer and a seller agree to, but there's 5 conditions that have to be met in order for a transaction to actually be an indication of market value. All right. There we go. Other term that is important here is that when folks look at appraisals, they talk about accuracy. We appraisers, we've got it pretty good because we don't worry about accuracy. We worry about credibility. Is the report, is the work worthy of belief? So credibility is the way that appraisal reports are judged, the way they're evaluated, the way that they are ranked. Credibility. This credibility is a definition, again, from the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, and we talk about assignment results. Assignment results are the appraiser's opinions and conclusions, and those opinions and conclusions are not necessarily limited to value. If you read an appraisal report closely, you'll find that there are opinions and conclusions throughout the report. The condition of the property, the condition of the market, the livability, the functional utility of the improvement. Those are all opinions and conclusions. Each one of those opinions and conclusions in an appraisal report must be credible. And to be credible, it has to be supported by relevant evidence and logic. All right, here is the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac form. Freddie Mac Form 70, Fannie Mae Form 1004. This is the one you're going to see for a mortgage lending appraisal report. When you get an appraisal report for a mortgage loan, it's going to be somewhere between 20 and 40 pages. We're going to concentrate on the first 2 pages of this form, and we're going to talk about them section by section. When I review other appraisers' work, I evaluate them section by section and determine the credibility of each section. The less credible each section is, the less likelihood that the appraiser's opinions and conclusions are going to be credible. The other thing you'll find is that the first page of this report is mostly facts. The second page of the form has more opinions and conclusions or assignment results. All right. For all of you who are not real property professionals, it's important for you to know that the mortgage loan appraisal report is not prepared for the listing agent. It's not prepared for the buyer's agent. It's not prepared for you, the seller, you, the buyer. You get to pay for it, but it's not prepared for you. It is prepared for the client and the intended users. The intended use, some of you might be able to read that, is for the lender client to evaluate the property for the purpose of a mortgage finance transaction. And the intended user is the lender client. Does it say buyer, borrower? No. Homeowner? No. It says it is the lender. So it's not prepared for you. It's very important that you realize that a lot of the wording, a lot of what is reported in an appraisal report is done for the benefit of the client and the intended user, and it's not prepared for you. As more evidence that it's not prepared for you, much of the report these days is reported in code. It is machine readable. There's something called the Uniform Appraisal Data Set. The mayor was talking about acronyms. If you want to talk about acronyms, the world of appraisal, yeah, we've got the...
It's like the military.
Yes. UAD, and this is why I personally quit doing mortgage loan appraisals, because I like writing English myself. Even though I have a weird last name, I like writing English, and I don't like writing code. And by the way, I'm going to make available, if anybody wants it, a copy of the UAD to help you decode appraisals. But you can see this is a Uniform Appraisal Data Set. Most appraisal reports that are prepared for a mortgage lender that are turned over to a non-lender, like a borrower, a buyer, or a seller, will have a decoding page attached to it so that you have what all the acronyms mean. All right. Also, appraisers, they are aware that their report is distributed to people other than their lender client. And there's also a certification statement in every single appraisal report. This is not on page 1 or 2. This is probably page 6. That the borrower, another lender, at the request of the borrower, the mortgagee, its successors, assigns, mortgage insurers, government-sponsored enterprises, and other secondary market participants may rely on this appraisal report as part of a mortgage finance transaction. Just because it says that these folks may rely on it does not make them an intended user. An appraiser needs to know his intended user at the time they complete the report. If the intended user changes, the appraiser doesn't know in whose hands it is. The appraiser writes the report knowing the intended user. All right.
Frank, I could.
Yes.
I was just thinking of intended users, just to give them an example. So jumping over to the assessment world, now, you know, the values we hang out there, when you go on a property appraiser's website, those are always as of a January 1, and the intended use of those, the use and user of those is generally the taxing authorities that you're arriving at those values for, so that they can take value times millage rate to determine tax base. So I just wanted to point out, that's just an example of where you're going to have different intended use and different intended users. Obviously, you have other examples where you might engage an appraiser specifically for estate work. So then you become the client. but there are all different use cases of how intended use and user can work. But we're obviously focusing on the lender world right now.
Thank you. Also, every single niche, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, has their own appraisal requirements. When an appraiser completes a report, a part of their compliance with the Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice means that they have to be aware of and comply with all the rules and regulations applicable to that assignment. So that's the Fannie Mae Selling Guide, the Freddie Mac Single Family Seller Servicer Guide, the HUD Handbook 4000.1, and the Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice. The Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice are the minimum requirements that an appraiser must comply with when they develop an opinion of value and they report their opinion of value. Those are minimums. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac exceed those minimums. FHA or HUD exceeds those minimums, and so does the Veterans Administration. Let's see here. All right. The Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice. We're here talking about combating valuation bias or illegal discrimination in real property appraisal. For the past 4 years, there's been a number of allegations made against appraisers, mainly accusing them of widely divergent results. And the allegation was that the appraiser considered either the racial or ethnic characteristics of the borrower or the racial or ethnic characteristics of the neighborhood in developing their opinion of value. There's also been allegations where borrowers have whitewashed their house. They've removed every evidence of the race or ethnicity of the occupants of the property and had a white neighbor stand in to meet the appraiser. And the result is sometimes a really wide range in the value opinion. As a result of this, the organization that writes the Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice has made it abundantly clear, even though, and again, Mike says I was appraising when he was a toddler. I did start appraising in 1977, probably before a lot of the folks in this room were born. And the Fair Housing Act applied to appraisers when I started, even though there was no Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice. When the Uniform Standards came out, or originally published in 1987, there was a requirement in the ethics rule for appraisers to be aware of, comply with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. That includes the Fair Housing Act. Appraisers were also required to complete their work without bias. So it's always been there. Some appraisers, I guess, weren't aware of it. So for the 2024 edition of the Uniform Standards, there is an amendment, significant amendment, in addition to the ethics rule, which is the first rule in the Uniform Standards, called the non-discrimination section of the ethics rule. Excuse me. It makes it abundantly clear in not black and white, but also blue and white print, that appraisers must comply with all applicable rules and regulations, including the Fair Housing Act, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, and also local fair housing acts and ordinances. I know that in Tampa, I think there's a Hillsborough County Act, or maybe there's a Tampa Fair Housing Act. Brian was talking about the Florida Fair Housing Act or Civil Rights Act. Over in St. Petersburg, there's a fair housing ordinance, or maybe it's enforced by Pinellas County. Appraisers must be aware of that, mainly because we're talking about the Fair Housing Act as amended: race, color, religion, sex, country of national origin, familial status, and disability. A lot of local and state ordinances expand on that and include a wider array of protected classes, including gender, gender identity, some are age, and so on. So appraisers must be aware of that, make sure And the new section of the ethics rule makes that abundantly clear. All right, here we're going to start talking about how we're evaluating appraisal reports. There are 3 credibility benchmarks. Even though the Uniform Standards has a whole bunch of standards, rules, comments, and so on, there's 3 benchmarks. Be aware of, understand, and correctly employ recognized methods and techniques. 2, not commit a substantial error of omission or commission that significantly affects the appraisal. And 3, not render your services in a careless or negligent manner by making a series of errors so that the entire report. In my experience, this 3rd benchmark is the one where we catch folks and we may be able to develop an allegation of bias by by recognizing a series of errors. The errors that we find and the errors that we need to concentrate on are errors in reporting facts or identifying and reporting facts. You can argue successfully to have a reconsideration of value. You can argue successfully to have a second or an alternative opinion of value by arguing facts. When you start arguing opinion, you've lost. I'm sorry, you've lost. Argue the facts. Also, when you're evaluating the appraisal report, don't jump to conclusions. I got a quick example here. Here's a contract price, $215,000. The opinion of value is $203,000. It's a crummy appraisal. It sucks. I hate it. Maybe. This one over here, contract price, this is an affordable house, by the way, $2,990,000. The opinion of value, $2,450,000. Don't jump to a conclusion. The difference between the contract price and the opinion of value, it's popular to attack that, but don't jump to a conclusion. You know, there's an outside chance the appraiser might be right. It's possible. It happens. I've seen it. All right. So just because the appraisal doesn't support the contract price doesn't mean it's bad. Avoid arguing differences of opinion. This is the front page of the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report called the URAR, also Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac form. So don't argue differences. Keep the benchmarks in mind. All right. Told you we're going to talk about sections. This is the contract section of the appraisal report. In this particular instance, the contract says that the contract section says that the contract price is $165,000. And the listing of the property included in the appraisal report. If you go through those 20, 40 pages, sometimes you'll find the listing of the property. Some lenders will require it. And the listing in the report says the on-market date is March 28th, 2023. What does it say that contract date is? February 25th, 2023. We got a contract date before the property was listed for sale. The appraiser certifies that they analyzed the listing and contract of that property. Did he really? In this case here, what happened is the lender gave the wrong contract to the appraiser. So the appraiser didn't bother to look at anything other than the contract price. They looked at the contract price, says $165,000. They appraise it for $175,000, and they said, I did a good job. They're not going to hassle me about this because I came in above the contract price. Actually, the contract was over $200,000. Factual error. What does that mean? Do you believe it? Is that believable to you when they start making errors in the first section of this appraisal report? Here's another one. The neighborhood boundaries, and this is the neighborhood section of the appraisal report, next section down. These neighborhood boundaries include 6 incorporated communities over in Pinellas County, and also unincorporated areas of Pinellas County. It includes suburban, commercial corridors, 100% waterfront, detached single-family residences, includes hotels, motels, and tourist-oriented resort areas. Does that look like a neighborhood to you? That's an area. There's nothing that defines that and indicates that is a neighborhood. Also, here's what a neighborhood actually is. And I bet you the Pinellas County property appraisers and other property appraisers use geographic areas, but they will make sure that there's some characteristics which tie them together as a neighborhood.
Absolutely.
So here's a definition of a neighborhood. And this happens to come from appraisal text, the appraisal of real estate, or excuse me, the dictionary of real estate. Natural and man-made boundaries. Wow, what's that? That's a river. That's a natural boundary. Also bays. And I can't read that anymore. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Also linkages. You know, not always are you going to find where properties that share characteristics are in the same geographic area. There could be linkages or proximity to employment, transportation, recreational facilities, and so on, which make areas competitive. Oh, I'm probably stepping on something.
I was watching. You didn't dance on the corner.
All right. All right. So that's why I have a printed version. Now, this is what happens when you appraise for over 40 years. You love paper. It's just, technology is just awesome.
Right.
I'm one of these guys. I actually hand-delivered appraisal reports to a client. They were printed with hand-drawn signatures. She really did appreciate it. Even though she has an email address, she doesn't know how to use it. So neighborhoods are very important. So you've got definition of neighborhood here. Notice what is not there to define a neighborhood. Race, ethnicity. They are not permitted. And in fact, if I went back, race and racial composition in the neighborhood are not appraisal factors. That has been on this form since the form came out. This particular form was first published in 2005. So race is not a characteristic to define a neighborhood. And appraisers that are using race or ethnic characteristics of a neighborhood are doing it incorrectly. If you see neighborhood boundaries which happens to match the racial composition that you're aware of, that's a credibility issue. All right. Here's the site section. This is another fact-based thing. The arrows I'm pointing to are areas where there are facts which are very often misreported. Lot size, lot area, zoning. In this case here, there's no such thing as detached residential single-family zoning. Actually, the zoning at SFR parentheses 01. Over in Pinellas County, where this property is located, there's no such zoning. You can check this. Even though you're not a real estate professional, it's very easy to check the zoning. It's very easy to check the lot size and lot area. In fact, Mike will tell you how to do that.
Sure. So one of the ways you can cross-check it on a property appraiser site is there will always be a land information section that you can scroll down to. Typically, they'll also, well, it depends on what county you're in. I can tell you, how many are from Pinellas County? All right, we've got a good contingent here. So on the Pinellas County site, you can look at the overlay, which is the legal description, shows you the platted boundaries, so you can get the dimensions off of there. Obviously, if it's not a rectangular parcel, then you need another way to get to the area, unless you can do some good polygon math. But you can also, there's a link to the plat book and page, which will bring you to the subdivision plat. And then on ours, if you go down to the land info section, we don't have a visual of that one, but it'll actually show you the gross land area in both acres and square footage. So there's multiple ways that you can check out the land area.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Next section is the improvement section. Again, these are facts. I've got several areas outlined here. They're all facts. You're familiar with the property. Either you are an agent, you're the buyer, you're the seller, you're the borrower, you're the owner of the property. You're familiar with this stuff. Make sure that it is reported accurately, like the style, the age, construction materials, room count, and then verify the UAD condition rating. C3. I didn't give you the cheat sheet yet, so you just got to look it up yourself. Now, this is not in the form, but this is usually part of the addenda. There is an improvement sketch. Appraisers that are doing a traditional Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac 1004 form are required to measure the property, draw a sketch. Their sketch is supposed to indicate the location of the rooms within the improvement. The measurements are supposed to be to the nearest inch or tenth of a foot. Now, here's a sketch. The borrower or the owner of this property gave me this from his prior appraisal. That is my sketch on the right. Now, this stood out to me like a sore thumb, maybe not to you. Family room, fireplace. Family room, fireplace. This is basic stuff, for crying out loud. You walk in the room, where's the fireplace? Is it in front of you or to your right? Is that a credibility issue? This tells me this other appraiser, I'm not going to say he.
One of those little movable fireplaces.
I'm not going to say that this appraiser was an idiot, but the more factual errors that you identify, the less credible the appraisal is, the less reliable that appraiser's opinion of value. What's next? Here's sketches, more sketches.
Okay, so this is an example of, obviously not the same property, but sketches from property appraiser sites. They're obviously not nearly as detailed. We're measuring the exterior boundary. One way to tell if an appraiser has actually measured the house is if their square footage exactly matches what's on the property appraiser site, well, then they didn't measure the house, because we round to the nearest foot for tax assessment purposes, whereas, as Frank pointed out, they're really required to measure to the tenth or the quarter, right? But you can tally up the living area square footage, and your gross area, and see the different, what we call in the assessment world, sub areas. So when you see BAS, that's base, that's 100% living area. Everything else is some percentage of 100%. So when we do our valuation, so for example, OPF would be open porch finished. There's all different, back to acronyms. We have those all broken down on our site as well. But just wanted to point out, so if they perfectly match, then they might need to come back out and remeasure the house.
Mike, where on the Pinellas County site could they find a cheat sheet on your acronyms?
Well, they're pretty much spelled out in the sub-area section here, you can see where we're showing the full description, but we also have information in the website. If you dig a little bit deeper, you can actually get to a full list of descriptions.
All righty, thank you. Now we're going to be talking about the next section of the appraisal report, which is the sales comparison analysis. Sales comparison analysis is, it's not brain surgery, it's not rocket science. You know why? Because we do it every day. Anybody here shop? Okay. When you shop, do you just go to the first available place and buy the first car that you see? No. Even if you have your heart set on a particular year, make, and model, do you buy the first one that you see? I do, if it's a Ford show. But most of us comparison shop. That's what the sales comparison analysis is based on. But when people are selling a house by owner, the first thing they say is, my neighbors just sold their house for. That's the sales comparison analysis. The value or the price is derived by comparison of sales or listings to the subject property. The sales comparison analysis assumes that the price is directly related to the price of similar and competitive properties. The focus here is on similarities and differences. Okay, sales comparison, selection of comparable sales. When somebody doesn't like, when they've jumped to a conclusion, like we talked about the difference between the contract price and the appraiser's opinion of value. When a real estate agent is involved, and very often borrowers, particularly with refinances, the first thing they do is they start giving the appraiser sales you need to consider these. Not every sale is a comparable sale. It has to be competitive. In other words, a typical buyer of your house, what else would they consider buying? Maybe they would consider buying the house across the street that just sold if it's the same size, same age, same condition, same bedroom and bathroom and garage count, and it doesn't have a pool because you don't have a pool. But if the house across the street is twice the size with a pool and a guest house, it's not a comparable sale. So your comparable sales have to be similar to the subject in date, location, size, design, construction, physical characteristics. This is what the sales comparison approach to value looks like. There's a number of facts that are reported here. The first fact is up at the top, a recitation of the number of listings similar to the subject property in the area and their price range. A recitation of the number of sales of properties similar to the subject within the past year and their price range. We also have the actual sales price of the comparable sales, subject property, comparable 1, comparable 2, comparable 3. These are factual fields. Sales price. The other thing that is reported is the contract date of each one of the comparable sales and the actual closing date. Contract date is important when there are changes in the market, when it's appreciating or depreciating, because your adjustment based on changing market conditions is based on the contract date, the date that the buyer and the seller agreed. Gross living area is a fact. You get it from Pinellas County Property Appraiser's site, or you get it from the MLS. All right. Here's where we start checking facts. In this particular case, the subject condition is identified as a C4, which is slightly below average. Comparable 1 is identified as the same. C4 rating, if you take a look at the UAD, thank you. Okay, I got two. Pardon me for just a sec. I can't have a cigarette while I'm doing this.
Take the microphone out.
So C4, the UAD cheat sheet says C4 means minor deferred maintenance, minimal repairs. Major building components are functionally adequate. Well, there's a picture of the interior. Now, I've lived in a house like this, but I wouldn't say that it was functionally adequate, with a bare concrete floor and doors hanging off the hinges and so on. That photograph is from the multiple listing service. And a real estate agent would have that. If you have a problem with an appraisal report, you probably are working with a real estate agent or you've got a contact with one. Have them verify the facts about the comparable sales for you. Here's another one. Gross living area says 1,300 square feet. Now this is from, I think, the Hernando County Property Appraiser site. And it shows this room on the back. Now if you can see this photograph, the room on the back has a ceiling about this high. And it's also aluminum. How many of y'all have, I'm not going to embarrass you, but usually a room that has a ceiling, which is the aluminum roof above the room, that's not gross living area. The problem with this is it inflates the size of this comparable sale. And when an appraiser makes an adjustment for it or fails to make an adjustment for the quality and the condition, it devalues or decreases the indication of value of the subject property. I got one more where the appraiser says the view for the subject is N, neutral, woods. The view of comp 3 is N, woods. Anybody can punch this address into Google Maps, Google Earth, take a look at an aerial photograph, use the Pinellas County Property Appraiser site, look at an aerial photograph, and what's next door? A retention area that will never be improved. I don't see any woods. I don't see any woods. And it doesn't make any difference here whether that makes this property more valuable or less valuable. It's an error. It's a factual error. It reduces the credibility. The other thing, it says porches. Porches. This place has this screen porch on the back, and there's no adjustment made for it. It's a factual error. So, with all the errors that we've identified in this appraisal report, we've got some serious problems, and it's credibility. So what is necessary is to find alternative, applicable, comparable sales.
Yes, so one way you can do that, on our website, for example, we have a sales comparison tool that you can easily get to from multiple places on our website. So if you've pulled up your subject parcel, you'll have those little buttons there off to the side on that quick pick tool. Up there on the far right, there's a comparable sale button. And if you click that, it will literally pull you a result set of comparable sales that have some default parameters already set. I'll show you on the next slide. This is what the screen looks like where you can filter. So that result set appears below this filter screen here. But it already has some nice defaults in there, so a lot of times you don't even have to touch it. It'll have, plus or minus 15% of your living square footage, plus or minus 15 years of your subject year built. It's sales within the last 12 months, and it automatically knows from our data whether it's waterfront or not and whether it has a pool or not. So it tries to filter those things out. Then obviously, if you don't get the result set, if the result set's too big, or too small, you can go in and filter those parameters to, you might have to widen the geographic area from a mile, or you might be able to bring it down even tighter if you have a lot of sales, and start to fine tune it. So it's a great tool, and a lot of county sites have maybe something similar, but that's a feature in Pinellas County that you can use.
Next one is my favorite.
Oh, okay. So this is what we call our large map. You can just visually drive the big map, and you can turn on sales layers by year. So you can turn them on by any of the past 5 years. We show the qualified sales. If it's an unqualified sale, meaning it's not at arm's length, then we typically take those off the map just to not confuse people. But in our latest release of the website, we've added additional parameters to the labels. So now you get not only the date of sale, the price, the qualification, you also get the size of the home and the living square footage and the price per square foot of that sale. So you can kind of look around in your neighborhood real quickly and see which ones are comparably sized, what that price per square foot is going for. It's a good base indicator. It's not the end all be all. You can have other things that are moving the needle on that sale, but it's a great place to also look at sales.
All right. When you are searching for comparable properties, you ask for a reconsideration of value, or you're trying to develop some information, maybe to turn over to the appraiser prior to them, or to turn over to them when they're doing an appraisal on either a property that you're buying, selling, or borrowing money on. Be aware of the characteristics that cause prices to vary. Financing can affect the price. Conditions of sale affects the price. Market conditions and the location. And again, location is I think is an interesting one. When I first started in real estate, I went to work for my dad. That was in 1976. He was a real estate broker in St. Petersburg. And there was a lady there that had a lot of experience as a real estate agent. She listed a house on 9th Avenue North in St. Petersburg, between 49th Street and 58th Street. 9th Avenue North at that time was a 4-lane, 2-way thoroughfare. Quite a bit of traffic on 9th Avenue North. And they assumed that somebody would buy it as a rental. No one would want to actually live there because of the traffic. And the house sold in a week to a lady, retired, who bought it because she didn't want to be tucked away and away from everything. She wanted to see what was going on. She wanted to hear things. And she paid a price comparable to what properties off the main thoroughfare. This is an appraiser's dilemma, is they can't make assumptions. You have to let the market talk to you. And so what might appear to be a location which is not popular, not valuable, less valuable, we can't let that affect. But personally, I like garages. If a house has a 4-car garage, it's the best house in the neighborhood as far as I'm concerned. I would never buy a house that had no garage. If I couldn't keep my car in the garage, I don't want it. But not everybody feels that way. So when you're searching for comparable sales, don't let your personal feelings get involved. The other thing is the elements of comparison. Physical characteristics like size, construction quality, condition, and amenities. This is what the appraiser should be paying attention to. This is what you should be paying attention to. And the best way to do that is to say, if I was a buyer thinking about buying this house and it wasn't available or it went under contract, where else would I buy? What else would I buy? Same as shopping for a car. If I can't find the year, make, and model at this lot, where else am I going to be able to find one? With respect to combating appraisal bias and discrimination in appraisals, pay attention to the location of the comparable sales that are used in the appraisal report. if it appears that the appraiser is cherry-picking sales from areas that have racial or religious or ethnic demographics similar to where the property is located, it's done wrong. Neighborhoods are not defined by race or ethnicity or religion. They're defined by natural man-made boundaries. They're defined by linkages, proximity to services and transportation. And just pay attention to that. There's a comparable sales map at each and every appraisal report. If somebody wants it, I got the UAD available. Our contact information is here. If you can't write that down, Google Frank Gregoire, you'll find me. I answer the phone, I answer my emails, and I'm happy to help you. Mike, you got any closing remarks?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that we have tons of resources, not only on our website, but we also do a lot to educate property owners and new home buyers. So we do a public education session every month that is live, and it is also online in real time. We do it at lunchtime, so it's basically an hour long. We change the topic each and every month. Those also end up on our YouTube channel, so you can go there and see past sessions. And it'll, we do ones for the one upcoming is for real estate professionals. So we try to help educate them and make sure they're not missing anything related to Florida property tax laws, because Florida is unique compared to the rest of the country. We have, a homestead exemption along with what's called the Save Our Homes cap. That makes a huge difference to new buyers, and they go through that cap reset. We spend a lot of time educating on that. So if you have anybody that wants to learn more about the assessment process, and all those resources are available to them through our website. So just want to let you all know that's out there, along with tons of brochures and other information. And reach out to us at any time. Our contact information is there as well.
Even though you got a break coming up, we've got a couple of minutes. If folks have questions, we're happy to take them, do our best to avoid them. Brian. Certainly. Thank you for the question. The question was the minimum requirements to become a real estate appraiser. The minimum requirements to become an appraiser are defined by the Appraiser Qualifications Board of the Appraisal Foundation. In the state of Florida, they have chosen to have a category called a trainee real estate appraiser. A trainee real estate appraiser is somebody that has taken a 75-hour course plus a 15-hour course. Also, starting in 2026, every single appraiser is going to have, that wants to become an appraiser, is going to have to take a 7-hour course on valuation bias and fair housing laws and take a 1-hour examination. So that's a trainee. A trainee appraiser is not permitted to actually do work on their own. They have to be affiliated with a state certified residential, a state certified general appraiser, and they can do work under their supervision. While they're a trainee appraiser, they gain experience. To become a state certified appraiser in Florida, the education is about 150 hours of appraisal specific work, including that valuation bias and fair housing laws, 15 hours of the Uniform Standards Professional Appraisal Practice, and 1,500 hours of supervised experience obtained over an 18-month period. They then take a state examination, which is actually an examination that was developed by the Appraiser Qualifications Board of the Appraisal Foundation. And a passing grade on that examination is 75. In Florida right now, I think the passing rate on the residential examination is about 50%. To become a state certified general appraiser, you need a 4-year college degree, which I don't have. And you have 300 hours of education and 3,000 hours of supervised experience, half of which must be for non-residential property. And by the way, state certified residential needs at least an associate's degree. There's ways, they used to be 4-year, but there's ways to finagle it with just a 2-year associate's degree now. But there are changes being made right now. The fact of the matter is that most appraisers in the United States, even though they're not as good looking as I am, they look like me. And that is, I'm still the first guy that stood up here that didn't have hair on his head. But most of them look like me. And we need younger and a more diverse group of people doing work. In order to do that, there are ways to gain experience other than working with a supervisor. One is the practical application of real estate appraisal, which is like a flight simulator means of gaining experience. The other are practical courses to gain experience. So they're constantly looking at ways to gain experience. And the Appraisal Foundation, the Appraisal Institute, the National Association of Realtors, the American Society of Appraisers, all have initiatives that are aimed at attracting a younger and more diverse group of people to become real estate appraisers. Yes, ma'am. I like realtors. I love them. I'm a realtor myself.
We refinanced our house a couple of years ago, and when the appraiser came out, she knew that I was really, and we live in a gated, hunter-sub community, about a third of an acre, over 2,800 square feet, with a pool. And she appraised, as the comps, and understand that I am very much aware of what has sold in my neighborhood too. The comps that she used, one was 2,000 square feet, one was 2,100 square feet, without a pool, by the way. And so basically, nothing was more than 2,000 square feet or 2,100 square feet. And those sold, one sold for 425, one sold for 440. You know what my appraised for? 365.
Yeah.
And that was because I know better. Normally, this is just our reality. On our side of the fence, we know not to be there, we know not to have pictures of, and it's unfortunate that still today, we have to think about it. We literally have to what we call the black house. And I was beyond furious, because come on, that was so blatantly obvious, and I'm still angry that I did it.
Yeah, you should be angry, but yes.
And it's very real for us today, still in 2020. It makes no sense, and the thing about it, so much of it is out of our hands,
Well, what is in your hands is the ability to file a complaint. Part of my past life, I was not an elected official, but I was a member of the Florida Real Estate Appraisal Board. What the appraiser did, if they took into account your race or your ethnicity in the valuation of the property, they broke the law. They deserve to be disciplined.
But we know why. How did I?
Okay. But, and again, you might not be able to actually demonstrate, but if there is that vast a difference between their opinion of value and what was happening in the neighborhood, the report you can demonstrate is not credible. You have your way of extracting a pound of flesh. Nothing will happen to correct things if people don't file complaints. I had the pleasure when I was on the appraisal board of making the motion several times to revoke people's licenses. It's never an easy decision. Well, sometimes it really is. But when people see wrongdoing, you have to file a complaint. I'd be happy to talk with you about this. This is part of what I do. I don't do mortgage work. I review mortgage work. And part of my life was spent fixing $3 haircuts. Which was a lot of this work. There's a lot of appraisers that just jam stuff out the door as quick as they can. There's a lot of very good appraisers, but there's some that really shouldn't be in the profession. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Thank you, Brian. And again, I'm sorry I didn't repeat, because you told the story, so I didn't repeat your story. But Brian just asked, when you have an appraisal where you suspect or you believe that there was some illegal aspect of it, racial bias or ethnic bias, what can you do immediately? Request a reconsideration of value. That is, something that every borrower has the right to do, and just about every agency, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, VA, CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. See, I even know what the acronyms mean. CFPB is all over reconsiderations of value. There's a real push right now to adopt like a uniform standard for reconsiderations of value. And all the legislation that has to do with appraiser independence, a lot of appraisers say, you can't touch me, I'm independent. All the legislation allows an interested party, a borrower, to produce, to first of all, identify factual errors and to suggest alternative comparable sales, and also to provide additional explanation. Every borrower has that right. And if your lender won't allow it, go find another lender. Because the lender, and there's been enough lenders right now that have stood in the way, have been an obstacle to a reconsideration of value. Loan Depot just had one where they paid a substantial settlement to borrowers in Baltimore, Maryland. And as part of their settlement, they're going to essentially give people a guidebook on how to do a reconsideration of value. That's what they can do immediately. A complaint to HUD, there's been complaints to HUD, and I'm sorry for anybody from HUD in here. They haven't resolved any of them. They've been sitting there for, some of them for 2 years, 3 years, and none of them have been resolved. All right.
We're going to have to wrap up.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.